also our consul from the Senegal. So I'm pleased to be here today, and also to welcome the author, Steve Grant. So let's put your hands together for Steve Grant. As I understand it, he's going to be discussing the book by Peter Strickland, that he wrote for Peter Strickland. And I understand that Peter Strickland kept a journal since he was 19 years old, and he died and documented many experiences, including his time as the first American consulate to the French West Africa. And I just want to thank again, the Maritime Museum for allowing me to be here today. And of course, in addition, we have our consulate from Senegal, and her name is Mom? Excuse me. Close. Thank you so much. And again, I'd like to thank Heather Behrens for inviting me today for the Maritime Museum. Put your hands together for So again, I want to thank you again. This is really great. I haven't been here since we had lecture held before Peter. That was really great. And I remember when lecture held went, crashed here and surf here. It was many years ago. But again, I want to thank you for inviting me here today. Thank you, the consulate, and also Peter for being here today. So, but I have a couple of certificates I'd like to give to you at this time. If you don't mind me, I have recognitions. I have a certificate. First of all, this is for Steve Grant. Steve. And I want to read this. This is from Ventura County Board of Supervisors. Certificate of recognition, commending, welcoming you first of all to Ventura County for writing many books. I think is what you called the new London Shipmaster, the Boston Merchant, and you were one of the first consuls to Senegal. Is that correct?
I wrote about the consul.
Okay. This is given to Stephen H. Grant for joining the Channel Maritime Museum as a special guest speaker today. And this is given to you on the stage today.
Yes, thank you very much.
And I have another certificate. You want to wait up here? We'll take a couple of quotes. This is from the county of Ventura Board of Supervisors. This is welcoming our consulate from Senegal. Thank you for visiting Ventura County. This is presented to you on this 17th day of October. Congratulations and welcome to Ventura County. And my apologies for... Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter and John. I am so happy and excited to be a part of this program where the honorary consul from Los Angeles has come to the Maritime Museum for the first time. And I also wanted to say that there is a good contingent from the Strickland family here this evening. The leader of the clarinet quartet is Jim Strickland, a band master who is the second cousin twice removed from the subject of my talk. And he has come with two of his daughters, Wendy and Nancy, but there is a third daughter who is here surreptitiously because she is connected with us through FaceTime. And so I'm going to say hi to Margaret Strickland, who is in Connecticut. Hi, Margaret.
Hi back.
While Peter Strickland is not a household name, he is at home in the Cedar Grove Cemetery in New London, Connecticut, in the good company of 300 other sea captains. Peter is important to me for three reasons. One, for a third of a century, he was the most informed American about trade between the U.S. and West Africa. Two, in his leisure time on board ship, rather than carve scrimshaw, he wrote and had published in my home city of Boston a book about the mariner's difficult life. Three, he left behind a daily journal covering 64 years of his life. Do any of you here keep a daily journal?
No.
I don't see a lot of hands.
No.
Now, what did this man look like? This picture of Peter Strickland with his Mark Twain mustache is the only picture I ever found of him. It's an engraving that I came across in a biographical dictionary. Look what he's wearing: a three-piece suit, a bow tie, a starched white shirt. He wrote in his diary that this was a most uncomfortable attire to wear in the tropics. Once I put an ad in a genealogical website to get a photograph of Peter Strickland before I found this one. And one of the replies said, "I don't have a picture of Peter Strickland for you, but I think I live in his house." In fact, the person lived in Peter Strickland's father's house, right across the street from Connecticut College in New London. I share a short bio from Who's Who in New England, 1909 edition. Can you read it?
Yep.
Yes. So, Peter Strickland lived between 1837 and 1921. He spent over 30 years in Africa. His last address was Neponset Avenue in Dorchester, Massachusetts. And I went there and I found his house. And I was thinking that maybe if I could get inside, I could find some interesting, mysterious documents underneath the floorboards. Because you never know what you're going to find. This says that he was a sea captain and a supercargo. I didn't know what a supercargo meant, so I looked it up. It's an officer on a merchant ship who has charge of the cargo and its sale and purchase. As a consul, Strickland's job was to monitor and facilitate American shipping abroad and look out for the welfare of American seamen. The geography we will talk about this evening includes the east coast of the U.S. and the west coast of sub-Saharan Africa. Rand McNally in 1899 put out in his atlas this image of West Africa. At the top you see the Mediterranean Sea. You have French Morocco, which is in pink. You have Spanish Morocco. You have the Sahara Desert. You have French Senegal. You have Portuguese Bissau. You have British Sierra Leone. Independent Liberia. Ivory Coast, where I worked as a Peace Corps volunteer with Lorraine Effers, who is here tonight. Could she raise her hand? Here's another representation of the east coast of America and the northwest part of Africa. There are two ways that Peter Strickland went from Boston to West Africa. If he sailed, he would go directly to Gorée. That's the bold line that goes that way. He had to pay his own way even when he was a consul. To sail from Boston to Gorée in Africa, he paid $100. If he took a steamship, he didn't go directly to Africa. He went to either France or England. And for the steamship ride, he paid $300. There were colonial empires in Africa. In 1883 and 1885, Otto von Bismarck assembled all of the colonial powers around a table, and without the participation of any Africans, they carved up the African continent. In this map, on the left, you see the Cape Verde Islands. Cape Verde Islands was not visible in the previous maps. Now that we have reviewed the geography related to Strickland's African trade, let's list the products carried in the vessels. The cargo from the United States to West Africa was mainly leaf tobacco from Kentucky and Tennessee, followed by wood products from New England, such as lumber and shingles. The cargo from the United States to Africa also included oysters, clams, mackerel, codfish, flour, sugar, rum, butter, pickles, petrol, turpentine, canvas, nails, anchors, and chains, a few pianos, and ice. Now, why would one export ice from the United States to Africa? First of all, the ice came from the Kennebec River in Maine, and it was cut into blocks and wrapped up in sawdust and swamp hay, and it went to West Africa to be sold to the French for refrigeration before mechanical refrigeration. Now, the cargo from Africa, it was mainly ground nuts, that is, peanuts, followed by animal hides, mainly goat hides, for shoes and boots. Also, palm oil, rubber, cotton, gum products. Gum was used in calico block printing in the textile industry. Gum arabic from the acacia tree in Senegal was used in pharmaceuticals, inks, and adhesive. There were no slaves on board the ships in Strickland's time. Contemporary scholarship defines legitimate trade as that commerce not related to the transportation of slaves. All of Strickland's trade was of the legitimate nature. Living decades in Africa, Peter Strickland relied on snail mail. Interestingly, what has survived are envelopes, empty envelopes. What more we would have learned had the envelopes that I came across been full. Here is a first envelope addressed to Captain Peter Strickland, U.S. Consul Gorée, West Africa. Can you make out the two postmarks? On the left you have Boston, and on the right you have Paris. Now I call it dumb of the Parisian postal clerk to put the postmark over the recipient's last name. Maybe he was greeting someone. Bonjour, monsieur. And then he put it right on the last name. I also call it dumb of the Boston postal system not to enter the year in the postmark.
Right.
Isn't that incredible? There's no year. If you look at the postmark to the right, you see 1 p.m. So you know it was 1 p.m., you don't know what year, decade, or century it was. I have a lot of fun looking at envelopes. Where did I acquire this envelope? On eBay. How many of you do eBay? I saw quite a few hands there. I went on eBay looking for a subject on which to write my 4th book. I would not have written anything about Peter Strickland if someone had outbid me in this online auction. You can say that my writing this book was accidental. Receiving the envelope and making initial inquiries of friends and of the State Department led me to writing articles. And I'll pass around one of them. It's from the journal See History. And the last article is Peter Strickland, U.S. Consul, West Africa. Thank you, Bill. I will also pass around the book that I will be selling at the end of the evening and inscribing to you. Its price is $15. Pretend you are a postal clerk now. If you find no room left on the front of the envelope to apply postmarks, you turn it over. 3 postmarks are on the back: Marseille, Bordeaux, and Gorée. Gorée was in the French colony of Senegal, and Senegal was in the greater administrative unit of French West Africa, Afrique Occidentale Française, as opposed to Afrique Équatoriale Française, which is further south. Keep this distinction in mind. Gorée Island was geographically in Africa, but it was administratively in France. Here is a second envelope addressed to Captain Peter Strickland, U.S. Consul, Senegambia, West Coast, Africa. It bears the same blue 5-cent stamp of James Garfield on it, but it was sent 1 year earlier, 1888. What is Senegambia? Does anyone know? Senegambia. Can you read it? It says Gorée, Senegambia. Mom.
Senegambia. Senegambia is just like the yeah, it's like the mouth of Senegal.
Right. So those people that go to Senegal figure out that the Gambia is in the middle of Senegal. And it was colonized by the British. But Senegambia you won't find on most maps. This envelope comes from Louisville, Kentucky, from a tobacco company. Strickland bought leaf tobacco in barrels and sold it in Senegal. Here's a third envelope written to Peter Strickland, Gorée, Senegal, posted in Clarksville, Tennessee by another tobacco company in 1903. Peter is not identified on the envelope as a consul, but we know he was still a consul at this time, until he retired in 1905 after 23 years in that one post. I was a Foreign Service officer, and there was no way that I was going to stay 23 years in one post. We were moved around every 2, 3, or 4 years. What is novel about this envelope compared to the two previous ones? What do you notice? It's typed. Typewriter came into fashion in 1904. And so this must be 1905 rather than 1903. Peter Strickland received a typewriter through the diplomatic pouch.
And also the
Yes.
Independence Day of Senegal, April 4th.
Is that Independence Day?
Of Senegal, April 4th.
Now who else would have known that? The day that it was sent from Tennessee was the independence of Senegal in 1960. So Strickland received a typewriter without any lessons in touch typing. He managed to send one of his consular dispatches with the typewriter, and then he said, "I'm sorry, I'm going back to my quill pen." Conducting research for a book on an American consul would not be possible by staying home and acquiring items on eBay. I had to go to Africa. I had to go to Senegal and delve into the archives. I needed permission to do this. I wrote to the Director of National Archives in the capital city of Dakar and explained the nature of my research project. He emailed me his approval. He later became a friend. His name was Saliou Mbaye. I understand that Mom's last name is Mbaye, but I believe they are not related. Is that correct?
It's possible.
They might be related. That's great. It's a large family. This is what the room looks like where I did my research in Dakar, Senegal. Dakar is on the mainland. Gorée is an island, a 20-minute ferry ride from Dakar. That morning there were 3 other assiduous researchers, 2 women and a man. 2 were Senegalese, 1 was French. One of the Senegalese is Muslim, as you can tell by her headscarf. The other Senegalese probably is, but his dress does not give it away. Here is the most interesting document I found in the Dakar archives, and I believe I'm the first person to discover this Strickland letter there. Peter Strickland hand-wrote and signed this letter on May 6, 1895, and affixed his blue consular stamp onto it. He wrote it in English. Why would he have done that? He's in Senegal. That was part of France and was governed by the French. Here's one answer. The first foreign language classes organized in Washington, D.C. for American diplomats began in 1906. Strickland retired in 1905. Tough luck. How can American diplomats assigned to foreign countries or territories be effective if they don't learn the language spoken there? Archives and Records Administration has put them on reels of microfilm. I bought these two reels containing 272 dispatches, and I spent many hours studying them. The saddest was the dispatch beginning, "I have the extreme unhappiness to inform you of the death by drowning on the evening of February 7, 1888, of my only son, Mr. George Strickland, the Vice Consul. He accidentally fell into the sea from one of the rails where he was sitting without apprehension of danger." Here is the sad handwritten dispatch. George was the second son to perish. You notice that he was the vice consul. So father was the consul, the son was the vice consul. Initially, Peter Strickland requested permission for the State Department to allow him to hire a Frenchman as a vice consul. State agreed, and before proposing his son, Strickland did employ two Frenchmen. Doesn't this seem odd? Where would this vice consul's loyalties lie? George presented his credentials, which his father, he possessed credentials which his father did not. George's French was fluent, and he could get along in the local language, Wolof. And Mom has put on the table a dictionary which is French and Wolof. It was a huge loss for Peter Strickland, the consul, and the circumstances of his son's drowning are shrouded in mystery. I took this photo of the Strickland house. I may have gone too far. In 1998, Bill Clinton visited the Strickland house during his official visit to Senegal. He is standing with the Senegalese president, Abdou Diouf, who is a man I look up to at 6'6". Some people call me Njol when I'm in Senegal. Mom is laughing because it means the tall person. But you won't be surprised that some people also call Mom Njol. Peter Strickland never would have believed that one day an American president would visit his home. Whoops. What is it? Hillary was there too. Now I want to show you the Mystic Seaport Library in Connecticut. Has anyone here been to Mystic Seaport? Many hands. The library has many documents pertaining to Peter Strickland. You have to don white cotton gloves to touch many of them. Luckily, much information on Strickland is available online. Here's one item in the collection. This is the logbook of the bark Zangaretta of Boston. Between 1869 and 1882, Strickland transported tobacco to Senegal on this 119-foot bark. He returned to the U.S. with animal hides and gum to the ship owner Matthew Bartlett in Boston. Has anyone here kept a logbook in his boat? Yes, a few. There is a second archive on the east coast of the U.S. that has considerable holdings of original Strickland papers. This is the University of Delaware in Newark. The Delaware collection is about 1 linear foot. Archives are generally measured in linear feet. These materials are kept in a special area of the university called special collections. The University of Delaware does not require one-handle documents with white cotton gloves. You just have to have clean hands. Inside the box are logbooks, correspondence, and diaries. Besides Strickland's consular dispatches, which shed light on his maritime and diplomatic role, his daily journal over 64 years, from age 19 in 1857 to age 84 in 1921, plays a major part in elucidating his African commerce, his shipping, and relations with his neighbors, his French colleagues, his home staff. Here is the first page written on New Year's Day, 1857. Generally, the first paragraph addresses the weather, the most important factor in the life of a mariner. On June 3, 1907, retiree Peter Strickland hired a two-seated carriage from Bufham's Livery Stable on the corner of Brainerd and Amity Street in New London and drove his daughter Mary to the Cedar Grove Cemetery in New London. He paid $300 for a lot and $100 for perpetual care. Peter had chosen a huge block of the finest granite from the quarries of Westerly, Rhode Island. He wrote the inscriptions on all four sides. On February 8, 1913, he wrote in his journal, "I somehow find it difficult to get at a plan for an inscription on my stone in Cedar Grove Cemetery." Peter Strickland, born in Montville, Connecticut, August 1, 1837, died in Boston, Mass, November 13, 1921. He was connected with Africa as shipmaster, merchant, and consul for more than 40 years. Mary Louise Rogers, his wife, born in New London, July 29, 1832, died Boston, April 19, 1915. George Strickland, born April 17, 1864, New London. He was Vice Consul of the United States of America for French West Africa at the time of his death, which occurred accidentally by drowning within the district of his consulate, February 7, 1888. I could not end with tombstones. As I said at the outset, I find it admirable that with his busy life of being in command of a ship, Peter Strickland found the time to write a book. I was not able to learn much about how he had the 189-page volume published in Boston in 1873 by the Williams Company. There are only two references to the book in Strickland's writings: a consular dispatch in 1899 and a journal entry in 1912. Margaret Strickland, who is listening to us and watching us from Connecticut, has acquired a copy of this book, and Jim Strickland has brought it. It's on display this evening. A detail from the title page portrays two sailors overboard, clinging by one arm onto a makeshift raft. Both have the other arm raised in signal of distress. On the right is a full-rigged ship continuing on its course. In the background, a spouting whale. The caption reads, "Can't stop. Time is money." The book is a treatise to call attention to the miserable plight of American seamen. Strickland identifies a sailor's 5 main malefactors as shipping agents, ship owners, boarding masters, ship officers, and consuls. Yes, even consuls. Although Strickland became one, in his merchant marine career, he came upon consuls in some ports that would not be bothered with sailors' woes. Strickland unsuccessfully argued for a federal subsidy for poor sailors who risked their lives to provide Americans with needed imports as well as exotic goods for the wealthy. I would like to transition into the Q&A part of this evening by asking a question to the honorary consul to think about Peter Strickland's life as a consul from 1883 to 1905 and how his life is different from the life of an honorary consul in 2018. Bill, could she have the remote?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Well, I would like to say thank you for having me here tonight. And that's my really honor, my big honor to be here, because I feel like, just like the yin and the yang, I'm the extension of Peter Strickland.
Yes. Yep.
Because he came from United States going to Senegal, and I came from Senegal coming to the United States and continuing his legacy. I've done what he did. I've done representing the country. I've actually done business. I've done studies. I've trained. And I'm wearing what I'm doing right now. This outfit right here is actually what the princesses who were born from colonies, I mean the people, the colonizers, and the local people, they were called the princesses. So they were wearing head wraps, and then the dresses that looks like, you know, the French lady's dress. And also the starch. If you hear the noise when I walk, starch. In Senegal, we starch our clothes, so it says. Because this is called brocade, which Peter Strickland probably come about to, you know, when he was doing his business. And also, like the gum arabic and the product that we use to maintain our clothes in good condition. And I believe that the similarity is like, you know, we both, like I said, you know, the yin and the yang, we like complete each other, complement each other. I'm here because I don't know if anybody know about the honorary consul and consul duties here. The presidents finally, because they did not want to have several posts of consul general in the West Coast, they decided they're going to have honorary consul that's going to actually be the extension of the consuls, who are actually going to do the same duties representing their countries, helping in the economical development, and also educational-wise and in the community. And I see that he has done all of that. And so the presidents decided in the Vienna Convention that they're going to have these people like me apply and then do all of that Peter Strickland was doing. So it's just an honor to be here to just be the extension of Peter, because, you know, I see myself in everything that he was doing, that I'm continuing to doing, and I mean, saying that, you know, the times are different, because we have technology now. We did not take 3 months to, or 6 months to ride a boat or something, I mean, go rowing a boat or something like that. But the boat itself is very significant because Senegal derived from Sunugal, which is our boat. That's what it means in Wolof, Sunugal. So French people call it Senegal just to, they found it exotic. And I could not be happier to have Steve call me because he searched me and then I'm the only one representing Senegal in the West Coast. And then besides another Senegalese guy who's in San Francisco. And as a matter of fact, I'm putting together all the honorary council and be the president. So we can actually represent more Senegal and educate people more about the country and give them more highlights about the country, what Senegal has to offer to the United States. Which is like, as you see, the relationship starting decades and centuries ago. So, right now I'm sitting on the board of the Los Angeles Consul, which is 104 consul and consul generals. And then I'm the president of the spouses of the LA Consul Corps, spouses. And I'm doing a lot for my country and for this country as well. I have my organization. I'm educating people here. I'm educating people from Senegal. And I'm doing a lot of stuff to put the country. So if every country is together so everyone knows who's who and what these two countries are and what kind of relationship we've been having for a long time. I had my degree before I came here 28 years ago. I lived in this country for 28 years. I have my degree in American literature and English civilization and linguistics. And before I was a consul, I was working in all the courts, Ventura County, Ventura courts, all over the Los Angeles area to interpret for the community. Sometimes when somebody's in trouble, they call me. When somebody's dead or somebody needs to be taken to Senegal, they call me. So I'm doing all of that stuff to tell you that I'm here representing my country and then being the extension of Peter Strickland. And I'm so blessed that you guys brought me here to talk about it.
I think we have time for 2 questions or comments. Yes?
Did all 3 envelopes come in the one eBay purchase?
No.
They
did not. So I had to be looking every week, every month. But I'm not the only one looking. Also, Margaret Strickland is looking.
Right.
But we don't compete against each other. Yes?
The export of American tobacco to Senegal, was that as if it were a foodstuff, or was it to start a tobacco industry in Senegal?
It was as a foodstuff at the time. So the leaf tobacco arrived in Senegal in barrels, and it was sold to the French. And that is honestly an aspect of the commercial exchange that I didn't look into to see exactly how it happened, but I think that the leaf tobacco was made into cigarettes and probably ended up in the hands and in the homes of not only the French, but also the Africans. A couple more questions or comments? Yes?
Aside from the book, did you find that your service in the Peace Corps naturally led you into the Foreign Service? Did it transition you in any particular way?
There was a transition, but it absolutely marked me for life. I went to Ivory Coast when I was 23, I think Lorraine might have been 22. I had 1 year of graduate study. But after I was there, I had met a lot of Africans. It was such a hospitable experience that when I went back to do graduate study in education, I kept in touch with a lot of Africans, and I ended up living in Ivory Coast for 15 years, and in Guinea for 2. I joined the U.S. Agency for International Development as an education officer. My second country was Egypt. My third country was Guinea. My fourth was Indonesia, and my fifth was El Salvador. So in each of those, staying 2 or 4 years and having language training when it was needed. Thank you very much, and I will be at the signing table.